Hello, today's video is going to be a book review. Well, it's not going to be a book review, it's going to be several reviews. So it's going to be my weekly roundup. It's been slightly more than a week. I think it's probably been about a week and a half since I last did my roundup of books. I've read quite a few. I was reading Nick Hornby's A Long Way Down at the end of my last review, and I really enjoyed it. It was good. I haven't seen the film. I have been led to believe it has been made into a film. But I think I'd probably quite like to see the film and just see how it relates to the book. But yeah, this was basically about a bunch of people who decided on New Year's Eve to jump from the top of a building. It's, I can't actually remember now what the place is called, but it's basically renowned for people jumping off the roof. So it's a disgraced TV presenter, a mum of a boy with severe disabilities, so he's never been able to communicate. She has to do everything for him. An 18-year-old girl who's comes from quite a prominent family, and her sister vanished, so she's got issues. And a failed rock and roll star from America. And it basically, this unlikely group of people come together, and they come together because they were all together on the hill, or on the building. And obviously the moment's kind of gone. When you've got an audience of people, or people queuing up waiting to jump off the top of the building, it's kind of, the moment's gone. So they kind of end up sticking together and going through this kind of, well, let's just give it another few months, let's, you know, trying to help each other out, and you learn a bit more about their lives. The teenage girl was a pain in the neck. I hated her character, but I think I was probably meant to hate her character. The rest of them I quite liked. I did quite like the rest of the characters, but I enjoyed it. Definitely worth reading, seeing where they get to. They decide they're going to give it a set amount of time, and then both, you know, all of them go back up and decide whether or not they still feel like jumping at the end of it. So yeah, that I enjoyed. This one is called Gods Behaving Badly by Marie Phillips. And it says here, being immortal isn't all it's cracked up to be. Life is hard for a Greek god in the 21st century. Nobody believes in you, your own family doesn't respect you, and you're stuck in a dilapidated hovel in North London with too many siblings and not enough hot water. But for Artemis, god of hunting and professional dog walker, and Apollo, god of the sun and TV psychic, there's no way out. Until one day a meek cleaner and her would-be boyfriend come into their lives and turn their world literally upside down. This book was funny. This book I really enjoyed. It was a real twist on sort of Greek gods and their kind of backgrounds. It dealt with the underworld. It dealt with the powers that gods have, powers from people believing in them and not believing in them, a slight touch on religion but not heavy at all. It was really good, really a really light-hearted read, really worth reading, and had me giggling through several bits of it, so definitely read that one. The next one I read was Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. I picked this up from a car boot sale. It says, my chest is starting to rise in panic. Tears have already started in my eyes. My throat feels frozen. I need to escape. Audrey can't leave the house. She can't even take off her dark glasses inside the house. I'm Linus and you're Audrey, right? Then her brother's friend Linus stumbles into her life with his smile and funny notes. He starts to entice Audrey out again. Well, Starbucks is a start. Do you always wear those? He nods at her dark glasses. Laugh, dream and hope with Audrey as she learns that even when you feel like you've lost yourself, love can still find you. Emotional, captivating and ultimately uplifting. So this is about a girl who is not at school anymore because something happened. You never find out exactly what happened, but some sort of bullying, I think, has happened at the school she goes to, and she isn't at school anymore, and she's been going through various therapy and kind of counselling and bits and bobs. She's become quite agoraphobic. She doesn't like crowds of people. She doesn't like noises. She's become quite worried. She gets quite stressed. So anybody in her house that is not meant to be there, if they talk to her, she becomes quite withdrawn and she gets into panic attacks. So this friend of her brother's, Linus, starts coming over because they are meant to be, Linus and the brother are supposed to be taking part in some computer game event. And so they're practicing, and so he comes over and he starts talking to her, and he starts talking to her through notes, which he feels more comfortable with, and then they build this relationship and this friendship, and he sort of encourages her to leave the house and push her boundaries. There's also just craziness going on in the house. The mother seems completely off her trolley, although in some bits I can relate to how the mother does things, but basically whatever she reads in the newspaper, I think it's the Times, must be true, and so therefore she's like, oh my god, my child's addicted to computers, and you know, there's this whole drama going on about her son being addicted to computers, and you know, and then it's, oh, this food is bad for you, so you know, cuts it out of all the diets completely. So yeah, she's it kind of touches on the story of her mum and why her mum is now like this, because her mum used to have a good job and, you know, be quite busy doing her own thing, but obviously Audrey's been quite poorly for a year, so things have changed and she's been at home looking after her. It is funny. There are lots of really funny moments in it. I've been told that Sophie Kinsella is actually quite a funny writer and that I should read more of her books. I think I've got 2 more upstairs that the person who I bought this from at the car boot gave me. So I'm looking forward to reading those. Yeah, really light-hearted and good fun. Chris Manby, Ready or Not. So this one I finished not very long ago. I think it was the end of last week. Every bride is entitled to some pre-wedding jitters, but that girl wouldn't think twice about marriage when her fiancé gets his eyebrows shaved off just in time to look horrendous for the photographs. But what if it's not the ceremony that freaks you out, but the happy ever after? Heidi Savage is wondering whether she can really forsake all others for macho, beer-swilling Ed. And how can a couple who have never even been babysitters be ready to start a family of their own? Will the answer come in the form of her ex-boyfriend Stephen, grown up, gorgeous and good with children? Is Heidi's dilemma simply a case of right shoes, right dress, wrong husband? Okay, so this book is about a girl called Heidi. She works in a radio station, and during one of the topics that they are discussing on one of their talk shows, her ex-boyfriend rocks up. You hear a lot, oh, go away fly. You hear a lot about her current fiance, who is completely different from this ex-boyfriend. This ex-boyfriend completely broke her heart. They were together quite young at uni, and you know, he kind of just one day left, and she never got any answers for it, and so that was kind of the significant ex that rocked her world and caused all sorts of upset. You find out that there was more to it than that later on in the book, which affects some of the reasons why she feels the way she does about family. So she works in this radio station, and he rocks up to be interviewed for this talk show, and she suddenly realised he seems really different from the guy he was back then. Still the same stunning guy that he was, but more grown up. She starts to question her choices because her rugby playing macho boyfriend is he seems to adore her, seems to absolutely adore her, but you know, is caught up in the whole rugby thug kind of you know, way of life. I mean, I'm not with, you know, a rugby guy, but I have friends who have been with rugby guys, and it's all that kind of shoving and pushing each other, and actually when he passes out drunk right at the beginning of the book, and he's the first one to pass out drunk in the evening, they shave all his hair off, and he's getting married in like 3 months. So she's like, I can't believe he's doing this. So yeah, so this is really good because it goes through her worries. She ends up babysitting quite regularly for her friend who's become a single mum, and it goes through her, how will she ever be ready to have children, how will she ever manage to look after a baby by herself, not by herself, but you know, with her other half, but you know, him at work and her looking after this baby. You know, how is she ever going to be a mum? He seems to be a natural with her friend's baby, and she just doesn't know what to do. Then her interactions with her ex, he ends up coming into the story more and more, and you know, is not just a one-off meeting. And so then she questions herself about everything that happened in the past, and he seems keen on her, which confuses things even more. And there's this underlying story that you think something else is going on with her partner, but with her fiance, and it's like, is it or is it not happening? There's just this other little side story going on, and it all kind of comes together in this big crescendo at the end. It was good. It was a real feel-good book. I did enjoy it. I didn't really relate to the character because I've always been like, kids is what I do. You know, it's like I was a nanny, and then I was I babysat when I was younger. I was a nanny. I had younger siblings, childminder and mother. So I've never really questioned, my ability to look after kids. But I know there are people that don't have that background and they find it really daunting. So I couldn't really relate to her, but I could relate to the sort of, the whole situation with, I couldn't relate to it. I've not been in that situation, but I could understand her, she with Mr. Right, the significant ex and all that kind of stuff. I think your first love probably is kind of where you set your limits for, what you want and what you don't want. And I think they always have a special place in your heart. And I think that was the problem with this, and the fact that he left without giving her any reasons. So yeah, definitely enjoyed this book. Okay, The Night Rainbow. Now this was good. I mean, those books were like, threes. They were all right, 3 out of 5. This one I would say is definitely up there, sort of 4.5 type book. It says, under the sweltering heat of the summer sun, 5-year-old P and her vivid imagination run wild in the meadows behind her home on the edge of a small village in southern France. P's father died in an accident, and now she only has her little sister Margot for company. Their mother is too sad to take care of them and has withdrawn into a place where P cannot reach her, no matter how hard she tries. When P meets Claude, a neighbour who seems to love the meadow as she does, she wonders if he could be their new papa. But what secret is Claude keeping? So, this book is about these 2 girls who are they've lost their dad. Their mum lost a baby, and she is heavily pregnant with their sibling. Their dad has only died in the last few months, so she's now she was already mourning the loss of this baby, and now she's pregnant again, and she's mourning the loss of her husband. So it's kind of like she's in this terrible place. She's in France. She doesn't have any support. She doesn't have any family. She clearly doesn't get on very well with her mother-in-law. And so these girls are kind of left to wander the fields and find their own food, and they're kind of a bit neglected. And it's just the mum's in a really bad place, and they just have to fend for themselves. So it's about what they get up to, how they spend their days. All the other kids are at school. These guys are, have been taken out of nursery and what have you since their dad died, and they're just wandering the village themselves. And they come across this guy, Claude, who obviously has some history. He's got a dog. He's obviously very cautious because a man being seen in fields with young girls regularly would cause questions in a small village, and sadly, and it does start to cause questions with one of the neighbours who overlooks the field. So it's about his past, which he has a backstory which comes out, and obviously trying to do the right thing by these children. Partway through the book, there is just this moment when you suddenly go, oh my God, I hadn't realised that. And then you start thinking about everything else and start thinking, right, yeah, now that makes sense. I have worked out something in this book. And I'm not going to say, because it's like a big part of this book. You suddenly realise something is not as it seems in this book. And then you read the rest of the book with that in mind, being aware of the fact that that is not as it seems. And then, it's kind of all comes together at the end with, obviously trying to make her mum happy, trying to have a better life, and also having this relationship with Claude, the neighbour, and helping him with his past as well. It's a really beautiful book. It is really beautiful. It says here, quirky, elegant and sweet. And it is quirky, elegant and sweet. It's really sweet. It is emotional, and really well written. Really well written. I love it. So definitely, if you can get that book, Claire King's The Night Rainbow, if you see that in a charity shop anywhere, grab it. I don't know how new it is. It's by Bloomsbury. But I get all my books from charity shops, so I never know what's current. Okay, 2013, so yeah, probably be a charity shop find. Okay, so this is the next one, The Bear and the Nightingale. This has had good reviews. I've had a few people read this. I was really looking forward to it. I went to pick it up, didn't think I had, and then I looked through my pile after thinking, oh, I should have picked that book up, and actually found out that I had picked it up from a local bookshop cafe that I love going to. So I was really excited to read it, started getting through it. I will admit I didn't get hugely far. I got, I think, 50 odd pages into it, maybe. It wasn't for me, I'll be honest. I got 50 odd pages into it and I was just like, I am not enjoying this. This is hard work. It's a Russian twist on a fairy tale. It's a twist on a fairy tale, like a modern day fairy tale, but it is set in the past. This is a bit confusing. I'm not describing this very well, am I? So it's set in Russia. It is basically, this child grows up having lost her mother in childbirth with these magical powers. Her mother was a witch, I believe, or her grandmother was a witch, I believe. Her mother had visions, and this girl, from what I understand, is going to take on this family trait. And the mother, the grandmother, not the grandmother, she's not a grandmother, she's their nurse. She's like their nanny stroke nurse who raised her mother and now is raising her and her siblings. Tells them all these sort of fairy tales and these fables and things. And I believe her father decides to remarry, and these stories start to come true. She has like a wicked stepmother, from what I understand. Now, I didn't get that far into it. I got as far into it as the father trying to find a new wife and going off to get a new wife. But it wasn't for me. I didn't really enjoy it. The names kept changing. I mean, they were difficult to pronounce anyway because they're Russian. And then there was obviously the pet name versions of the Russian names, which I found difficult. So you just get your head around pronouncing one name and then they change it and you have to get your head around pronouncing another name for the same person. And I don't know, I just couldn't get into it. It didn't flow well for me. It wasn't for me. But I've heard loads of great reviews about this, so don't just take my word for it. This might work for you. And the one I'm currently reading, again, is one from a charity shop. It's called The Valley of Secrets. And it is by Charmaine Hussey. I'll just read you the blurb. It says, Stephen stood and stared in amazement. He certainly hadn't expected such grandeur. The tall, heavy iron gates rose up high in front of him, a seemingly impassable barrier. Just as he was turning to set off, a very weird noise rang out, a plaintive, somewhat musical call echoing through the darkening treetops high above his head. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. Stephen froze. Abandoned as a baby, Stephen had nearly given up hope of ever finding his family. His epic adventure of the imagination, a lifetime's work from a brilliantly talented narrative voice, follows his change in fortunes as he receives an unexpected letter from a strange source and sets off on an unforgettable journey. From a drab room in London, where the rain confirms his greyness of his life, Stephen travels to a Cornish valley, remote, exquisitely beautiful, and heavy with secrets. This unique tale, beautifully decorated with Christopher Crump's highly detailed pen and ink drawings, will absorb your reading moments as it sweeps from London to Cornwall to the Amazonian rainforest on a journey which is quite simply unforgettable. And it's set in this place called Lansbury Hall. So there's the map of Lansbury Hall. And I'm really enjoying it. I've got halfway through. This guy is, it's just him in this hall. There's no electricity. Strange things are happening, and nobody in this village where this hall is set has ever set foot in this place. And the guy that lived there, his great uncle Theodore, was never seen by anybody. As far as they're concerned, he never left the place, and nobody ever went in. It's very overgrown. it looks quite neglected on the outside, but actually the inside, although it's heavily dusty in lots of the unused rooms, is actually a really nice place and well kept. But there's something strange, and there's strange creatures. And he starts reading through these old notebooks from sort of the 1800s, from his grandfather, turns out to be his grandfather, and it starts to tell the history of what is actually now going on in this Lansbury Hall, which is where he's living. It's really enjoyable, really light-hearted, really easy to read, and I'm really enjoying it. I have no idea what year this is from. Oh, 2003. Okay, so it is quite old, but 2003, and it's set in 1980 something, I think. Or either 1980 or 1990 something. I can't actually remember off the top of my head. I wonder if I can see. The year was 1985. There you go, 1985. So it's before mobile phones and all that kind of stuff. Because there are times when you just think, oh, you know, I'd just do this, and you think, no, actually I wouldn't, because I don't have a mobile phone. So yeah, it's kind of it's really, I mean, this drawing here with these little eyes, I don't know if you can see all the little eyes. They're really cute, and I think that gives you an idea of, you know, what's going on in the hall, and why the condition on the will, when he inherited this place, the condition on the will is that he is not to disturb anything, he's not to change anything, and people are not allowed to come in to the grounds. And he gets to, if he can abide by those rules and conditions, then he gets to inherit this entire place. So yeah, nothing is to change, but I think there's a reason for that. I think these little creatures have something to do with it. I think, yeah, I'm not going to say any more. But yeah, if you ever see that on the shelves, get it. It's really good, really enjoying it. Okay, so those are the books I have read in the last probably week and a half, and that is what I'm currently reading now. Sorry, I'm really croaky because I've got this horrible cold that I've had all week. If you've read any of those and you have any comments, then let me know, because I love getting comments and I love replying to them. I always reply to them. And if you have any comments on any of those authors and recommendations of any other books, then I would love to hear about them, because I'm really rubbish at remembering authors. And so I tend to read a book on its own without thinking about the writer. But maybe I should start taking note of which ones I really enjoy and then reading more by that author. So yeah, let me know if you've read anything else by any of those authors and would recommend any of them, because I'm always looking for recommendations. And